Imagine an 11-year-old boy in a Nazi concentration camp. Through a twist of international intrigue, he's saved from the gas chambers, even as many of his family members die. Decades later, that same person would come to the United States, a country that welcomed him, and he would go on to transform the lives of millions.
This is the story of Adam Heller, the inventor of many transformative technologies, including ones that power the continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, which lets people with diabetes track their blood sugar in real time. And we are honored to be joined by Adam Heller himself.
In this episode, we explore the remarkable impact of CGMs and discuss how these tiny devices have dramatically improved the way patients live with diabetes.
And we will explore why CGMs are moving beyond diabetes care and are catching on with a surprising audience, athletes, and even everyday people who want to track their health in real time. And finally, I will share what I learned from wearing a continuous glucose monitor myself for an entire month, just for a Discovery Dialogues podcast. Welcome to the Discovery Dialogues podcast, where we take a deep dive into the history of groundbreaking discoveries in the life sciences. I'm your host, Ani Deshpande. Each episode, we will uncover some incredible, insightful, and often just insane stories behind breakthroughs in medicine. Join us as we journey through the twists and turns of scientific history, one breakthrough at a time.
I'm Pam Itkin-Ansari, a diabetes and pancreatic cancer scientist at the Sanford Burnham Prebys Institute in California.
And I'm Ani Deshpande, a cancer researcher also at Sanford Burnham Prebys. Last time, we talked about the hemoglobin A1C test, a kind of time machine that lets doctors see blood sugar control over the last 3 months.
Right. It shows sugar sticking to hemoglobin, and if it's there, it's sticking elsewhere too. Hemoglobin is replaced every few months, but some proteins, like the crystalline in the lens of our eyes, essentially last a lifetime. So when sugar builds up on these proteins, it causes complications like cataracts, also the nerve damage or blood vessel damage that many patients suffer from.
And while the hemoglobin A1C value was very important to know as an indicator of long-term sugar-induced damage, you could only get the test done in a clinic. What patients really needed was a way to check their blood sugar at home. In the 60s and 70s, test strips and small readers finally made that possible with just a prick of the finger.
But how many times a day can you prick your finger? Every test hurts. I knew a little guy named Calvin who had already had 16,000 finger pricks to test his blood sugar by the age of 6, and he is not alone.
And pain wasn't the only issue. A finger stick just gave you a snapshot. You saw the number, but not the direction. Was the blood sugar spiking up, or was it crashing down?
Exactly. And that's what continuous glucose monitors, CGMs, made possible. A continuous glucose monitor is a tiny plastic disc about the size of a small coin that sits on your skin. Inside it is a hair-thin filament that slips just under the skin with almost no pain. The tiny filament measures the sugar in the fluid around your cells, which is almost exactly the same as your blood sugar level. It does this automatically every few minutes and beams the results straight to your phone. No more endless finger pricks. And most importantly, it shows you where your sugar is heading.
Yes, and if you or someone you know uses a CGM like the Freestyle Libre, today we will share with you the incredible story of the man behind it, Adam Heller.
This is a story of war, survival, innovation, and a father-son relationship that touched millions of lives.
When Adam Heller was a young boy growing up in the Hungarian-speaking part of Romania, which became a part of Hungary in 1941, the country was becoming a dangerous place to be Jewish. In the 1940s, anti-Semitism was sweeping through the country.
Adam Heller's father, like many other Jewish people, was sent to a slave labor camp where he was brutally beaten. After 18 months, he was released, but only 1 in 8 people there survived. After 4 months, the family was forced into an open brick factory with thousands of others. There were no toilets, there was hardly any space to even lie down, and barely enough food to survive.
Yet, as terrible as this was, an unimaginable horror was unfolding. Within a span of just 8 weeks, more than 400,000 Hungarian Jews were loaded onto cattle cars on trains, deported to concentration camps, and most of them killed upon arrival.
My grandparents were murdered, my uncles, my cousins, my friends. In the community that I come from, there were 18,000 Jews, of whom 1,000 Jews survived. I survived by miracle the Second World War.
In fact, Adam Heller told us that his grandfather was an insulin-dependent diabetic. And the really tragic thing was that he was being taken to the gas chambers at Auschwitz by the Hungarian guards, but he didn't even make it that far.
He died on the train, possibly because of his diabetes.
For those who are watching the video version of this episode on YouTube, we have included images from these actual events.
One day, like the rest of his family that had been sent to the gas chambers at Auschwitz, Adam, his parents, and Jewish people from all over Europe were herded onto a train. For 9 days and nights, though, the train wandered through Europe. No one knew where it was headed.
Here's Adam Heller talking at a Chabad in Wyoming about his ordeal.
Suddenly we hear a rumor that we are about to reach Auschwitz. The Polish Jews among us and many others immediately recognize the name as Auschwitz. And they desperately try to escape because they knew what's going on.
But what none of these passengers could know was that they were part of secret historic negotiations that were taking place. In 1944, as a desperate measure to increase the supply of goods into Germany, the infamous Nazi leader Adolf Eichmann came up with an outrageous plan. He was telling Jewish leaders,
well, I'm about to start the operation of my small mill, in German, meine kleine Mühle.
And by small mill, Eichmann was saying that he would ramp up the gas chambers at Auschwitz. Unless,
he said, I have for you a suggestion, a proposal that you can't refuse. You deliver to me 10,000 trucks loaded with goods, and I give you 1 million Jews, including all the Jews of Hungary, and you can take them wherever you want. The question is, why did Eichmann put this on the table? Obviously, Eichmann was, even though he was the chief annihilation officer, why did he put this on the table? He couldn't have done it on his own. It turned out he was instructed by Heinrich Himmler to do so, because Heinrich Himmler recognized that Germany has lost the war fighting the Russians, the British, and the Americans, doesn't have a chance. And he said, there is one thing that we may still be able to do, and that is negotiate a separate peace with the American and the British and go after the Russian.
This all sounds unbelievable, but this historic episode was sadly called the Blood for Goods bargain. And in the first phase, as Adam Heller recounts, here's Heller in an interview 10 years ago.
We, along with 380 Jews, were not shipped to Auschwitz, but to Budapest. And then there were negotiations on whether we should be sent for gassing or whether we should be sold. Unfortunately, we were not sent to gassing, but we were sent to another German concentration camp, Bergen-Belsen, where the negotiations continued.
But Bergen-Belsen was no refuge. It was overcrowded, it was filthy, it was filled with disease and starvation. In fact, this is where Anne Frank of Anne Frank's diary fame died. And Adam Heller lost nearly half of his body weight. Finally, Israel Kastner, a prominent Hungarian Jewish leader, had arranged for a partial settlement. He convinced the Nazis to release some Jewish prisoners in exchange for 5 million Swiss francs.
As the end of the war approached, in December 44, the price dropped. And because the price dropped, we were released to Switzerland at a lower price. I was part of the deal in the down payment.
Adam Heller was not destined to die. After the war, Adam Heller's family moved to Palestine and to the newly formed country of Israel without any of their belongings. In Israel, Heller's life changed dramatically. He learned Hebrew, lived on a kibbutz, and felt a strong sense of community. Then Adam went to university.
That's where I met my wife, who enticed me to marry her later.
She forced you, probably. Yeah. Yes. And you're afraid to leave, I see. Right?
And I was defenseless.
And alongside this personal transformation came a professional awakening. Heller was mentored by some of the most brilliant minds, including the legendary scientist Ernst Bergman and American chemist Ernie Grunwald, who left a lasting mark on Heller's scientific approach. In fact, in Ernie Grunwald, Heller had the perfect teacher. As Heller told us about Grunwald's trip to Israel,
he went through London, and being an American, he didn't know whether the traffic comes from the left to the right, to the right, to the left. And he was hit by a car. And he came to Israel with broken limbs.
oh,
And he needed a pair of arms and a pair of legs. That was me. And you couldn't have a better teacher than a person sitting there with his arms broken and telling you exactly what to do and what not to do in a laboratory.
Ani, can you imagine all 4 limbs broken because of looking the wrong way for oncoming traffic? And it reminds me of a novel I read where the Brits figured out someone was a German spy because he looked the wrong way when crossing the street.
yes. So later, Heller came to America to train at Berkeley, and then he was recruited to Bell Labs, the greatest hub of technological innovation in the world at that time.
For 100 years, Bell Labs has been a pioneer of progress. We've harnessed our extraordinary imagination to fuel visionary breakthroughs and shape the future of technology, solving humanity's most pressing challenges. We created the first transistors and lasers, connected the world through the Telstar satellite, built the foundation for today's digital age with information theory, and developed artificial neural networks for machine learning. Our work has fundamentally changed how we live, work, and communicate.
This was the atmosphere Heller thrived in, and he loved every moment of it.
But then there was another tragedy in Adam and Alana Heller's life, and he had to leave Bell Labs.
As Adam Heller says in an interview to the Electrochemical Society,
I had to leave because my wife and I had a handicapped daughter who was misdiagnosed. She was brain damaged and deaf because of the misdiagnosis, which also tells you why I went so deeply in diagnostic products.
Later, because of this, Ilana made a decision to stop her PhD work, which was with a future Nobel laureate. And Adam would only take jobs in places that had the best possible schools for their daughter. And this tragic event completely changed their lives. But as Alana is quick to add,
we changed it for the better.
but these multiple moves didn't stop Adam Heller from doing transformative research. In fact, he became one of the most prolific inventors in history with inventions like the first commercial lithium batteries that powered medical and industrial devices and liquid lasers. But then he told us,
my daughter passed away at the age of 24 in 1982 after she no longer needed the school in Massachusetts. I returned to Bell Laboratories.
once Heller was back at the Bell Labs,
There was a unit called Research Area 10. the greatest hour of science ever in the world. Anything and everything that now exists in communications, or in AI, for that matter, neural networks, comes from products,
Yeah.
fibers, satellite communications, cellular telephones, anything and everything.
But another blockbuster invention was still to come.
I spent 11 wonderful years at the laboratories where my interest in glucose started.
Just a quick chemistry reminder here. Electrons are tiny charged particles, and when they move, they create electrical current. The same current that lights up a bulb and powers your phone. Now, electrons are also constantly moving inside our bodies, and that's how we get energy from food, how our muscles contract, and even how our brain sends signals. Proteins called enzymes speed up these reactions, and one enzyme that scientists were studying called glucose oxidase has just one specific job: to remove electrons from glucose, and this creates an electrical signal.
Scientists began to wonder if there was a way you could listen in on the activity of this enzyme. Then you would have a readout of the amount of glucose that was present.
Researchers like Leland Clark, Lo Gorton, and Yusas Kulis had done extremely important work on this enzyme, but hurdles in converting it into an implantable glucose sensor remained. Now, if the electrons from glucose oxidase could reach an electrode where they could be measured, then one major problem would be solved. But the electrons are locked deep inside the enzyme, and an attempt by a group at Oxford to amplify the signal from these electrons hadn't quite panned out.
But these attempts kept the dream alive and lit up Adam Heller's imagination, setting him on the path to big breakthroughs.
Together with his colleague Yinon Digani, Heller figured out how to wire enzymes directly to electrodes. Here's what that means. Heller found a way to attach electron shuttling stepping stones to carry the electrons all the way to the electrode. And in their absence, as Heller said, scientists could get no electrical signals. And for the first time, the electrical heartbeat of an enzyme could be plugged straight into a measurable device. And to make this practical, reliable, and scalable, Heller designed polymers that could hold the enzyme in just the right configuration while still allowing the charge to move.
This changed everything. Now, instead of trying to detect the products of the enzyme that biology leaves behind, we could watch the activity of the enzyme, seeing the electrons in motion, opening a door to a whole new era of biosensing.
We opened up proteins, we attached redox centers, and we had a new interface between electronics and biology. And this became some of our most famous papers ever.
And it was especially good news for people with diabetes because the very first enzyme optimized for biosensing was glucose oxidase, perfectly suited for creating a device that could monitor sugar levels.
Heller realized that for him to advance this technology of the continuous glucose monitor and take it to the masses, he needed to leave his beloved Bell Labs. Because at that time, the US government really restricted Bell Labs to only work on communication. So Heller was torn between his love for this great institution and his desire to help take the technology forward. In fact, as he told us,
I'm not kidding you. I had to go and see a psychologist with whom I spent several hours and get myself cured of loving Bell Laboratories so I can leave.
So Adam moved to the University of Texas at Austin and recruited an incredible business partner, his son Ephraim, who had graduated from Harvard and was getting an MBA at Yale.
Pam and I had a wonderful conversation with Ephraim, a visionary and accomplished entrepreneur who has brought forward technologies to improve lives in many human conditions and is now focusing on patients with Parkinson's while carrying forward the legacy of co-founding TheraSense with his father, Adam Heller. And he has some really good things to say about our podcast.
Ani, you weren't on the call when I told Pam that yesterday I watched the first episodes of your videos on YouTube, and I learned so much from them. I thought I knew the basic history of diabetes. Turned out I knew nothing. I just want to applaud you for undertaking this. It's fascinating.
Thank you. We might use that in our promotionals. Just
Someday, yeah. Ephraim, who realized the enormous commercial potential of CGMs, tells us.
So my father, despite being a technological genius, really had very little sense of what his technology was worth.
Together, they realized that since there are hundreds of millions of diabetic patients around the world, a blood sugar monitoring device could replace 16 billion with a B, blood draws every year.
And by that time, my father had basic working prototypes of an implantable glucose sensor. It looked very different from what came to market later, but it worked. It tracked glucose.
Right.
So incredible breakthrough.
The Hellers thought that now investors would leap at a product that could help millions. But
many of the venture capitalists, and you'll be amused by this, were very concerned that there was a cure for diabetes right around the corner.
Ani, can you believe that those VCs were afraid that making a CGM was pointless because diabetes was about to be cured? If only that had been true.
We were unable to raise venture capital for the implantable sensor, but one venture capitalist, a woman named Annette Campbell-White, told us, I'm not going to fund your continuous glucose sensor, but if you can adapt the technology to measure glucose in a painless fashion, I would fund that.
remember that until this time, drawing blood meant that you had to prick your fingers and it was really painful. So she offered to fund their company to solve that problem. The Hellers then put the CGM on the back burner and tackled the pain problem.
Because of Adam's chemistry, we were able to use the incredibly small blood sample that would come out of the arm when you lance the arm. It was completely painless. You get a much smaller blood drop. You get a blood drop of a few hundred nanoliters, but the corollary is that there's also far fewer nerve endings on the arm. And that eventually led to the formation of TheraSense.
And coming back to the CGM, despite tons of experiments in rats, what they now needed to show was that the device could function effectively when attached to the arm of a moving animal, more like a human. Enter Ali, a chimpanzee that naturally had type 1 diabetes.
Diabetic chimpanzee, a very happy one.
All they needed to do was have Ali wear the CGM prototype in the form of a watch so that they could take measurements. And the paper says it took 6 or 8 weeks for the chimpanzee to get used to the watch.
That's correct. You see, little chimpanzee wanted to play with the watch. When Ali got fed up with playing, we started to do measurements. Then we had to start teaching the chimpanzee to present her finger.
Can you imagine? You're working like crazy to get your technology out, and you have to wait 6 to 8 weeks for a monkey to stop fooling around. Now that they had data from an animal more like a human, freely moving, maybe fussy and unpredictable, they finally had a product ready for prime time.
The monitor eventually made it to the market, and this changed everything.
TheraSense became a standout Bay Area success, even as competition from other players was heating up. TheraSense was ultimately acquired by Abbott Labs for $1.2 billion, and a painless, implantable CGM that could electrically measure glucose for many days without requiring calibration with a finger prick test was ready for the masses. You know, it's been wonderful to watch more and more people wear their CGMs openly. No hiding, no shame. Folks like Nick Jonas, actress Halle Berry, NFL star Jay Cutler.
And Pam, what's really fascinating is that CGMs that were originally designed for people with diabetes, lately they've found a completely unexpected audience. Now we hear about athletes, wellness enthusiasts, and even social media influencers without any diagnosed condition like diabetes using CGMs just to understand how their body responds to food or to activity.
Here's a health headline that caught our eye. It's a device that many people with diabetes use every single day. And now those who don't have the disease are also using it to try and improve their health.
So if you are on social media, I'm sure you must have been drawn in by these reels.
Let's see what a chopped salad does to my blood sugar.
Do you know what full cream milk does to blood sugar levels? Let's find out.
Even though these videos are incredibly popular, often getting hundreds of thousands of views, there's a real debate going on about whether CGMs are actually useful for non-diabetics.
Mario Kratz, who has a popular YouTube channel, Nourished by Science, says,
For those of you who are not clear about what a CGM is, these are small devices that attach to your skin with a very thin filament inserted into your skin. These CGMs typically measure glucose levels once every minute, thereby providing an almost continuous measurement of the ups and downs of glucose levels. You can enter your meals and drinks and other factors that may affect your blood sugar levels, such as sleep, exercise, and stress. And then you can see how your blood sugar levels respond to each.
The big question is this: could these new devices actually give us useful insights?
yes, and could they change the way we think about food we eat, or about our metabolism, or even about our health itself? For this episode, I decided to find out.
But before we dive into your experience, I want to be very clear. The goal of our podcast is to share the excitement of scientific discovery, never to offer medical advice.
Yes, and the only reason I decided to test out a CGM is to find out firsthand what this device can tell me and what it cannot.
And I didn't wear one because I was afraid to find out. Instead, I can just ask you, Ani, tell us, what did you learn?
You know, Pam, the kind of data junkie that I am, and from that standpoint, I think it was really interesting. Observation number one, it wasn't just me, but a couple of trainees in my lab started wearing CGMs. I swear I didn't force them.
That's very important.
And the first observation, not surprising at all, but still interesting to see, was that everyone is different. The same foods eaten by different people gave very different results.
Wow.
And that's the thing. There's this discussion and debate ongoing about what that actually means. Observation number two was the unseen sugar. It really confirms a lot of what we already know and talk about, like how starchy foods that include rice and pasta, they dump sugar into your blood almost immediately after you eat them.
And you could see it happening live.
Exactly. And it shouldn't be surprising. It's still pretty amazing that these foods like rice and white bread, which don't really taste sweet,
Right.
often gave me much larger spikes than things that were obviously sweet to the tongue. Observation number three, the other very important thing I could see very clearly, is that adding protein or fat or fiber to food really reduced sugar spikes. Even multigrain bread, it immediately spiked my sugar, but that exact same quantity of bread when eaten with eggs or things like avocado cut the sugar spike almost in half.
Yeah, that is interesting.
The same thing happened when I added yogurt or fiber-containing vegetables to carb-rich meals such as rice or oatmeal. To me, the most amazing thing about this is that adding proteins, fats, or fiber to carb-rich foods, even when I did not reduce the total amount of carbs, reduced the sugar spikes pretty substantially.
Wow. Now your only problem is gaining weight from all the calories you're adding to keep the sugar from spiking.
Of course, we need to watch out for that.
And you tried testing food order also. I thought your results were very interesting.
Yeah, that's observation number four. Having a salad before a carb-heavy meal really blunted the spike from the meal, so the order mattered. And the same was with dessert. Eating dessert after a meal instead of eating it on an empty stomach made a very noticeable difference in the sugar spike.
That's interesting. And Ani, I can add a lesson 5 here. I've noticed another benefit from your CGM. You seem to be thinking about sugar spikes more.
Maybe for the next 2 weeks or so before I descend into shameless overconsumption again.
Well, I think you're just eating the same things, but you're worrying about it more. And jokes apart, you're much more aware of how certain foods might spike your glucose.
Totally. I think that might be one of the benefits of looking at how foods affect you, and it changed the way I think about eating. But of course, I get the other side too. Tracking this could make people really anxious.
Right. We need to reiterate that while CGMs offer powerful insights, especially for people with diabetes, we still don't fully understand what glucose spikes mean in people without the disease. Are they actually harmful or just normal biology as long as you have extended time in range?
Which is the time you spend between 70 and 140.
Exactly.
If most of your time is in that range,
Exactly.
then...
While the jury's still out on the usefulness of CGMs for the general public, they've clearly been a godsend for people with diabetes. There's good evidence now that using a CGM cuts down on hospitalizations for patients with either type 1 or type 2 diabetes.
And it's really amazing to think that despite suffering such atrocities early in life, how could someone make discoveries and inventions as impactful as Adam Heller did?
As Ephraim tells us,
He technically is in a league of his own. He's the only person I know who developed 3 lines of products completely disparate from each other that all sold in the billions of units per year.
And for these momentous achievements, Heller received numerous awards, including the National Medal of Technology given by President George W. Bush. But perhaps the most gratifying of all is that even in his 90s, Heller still receives letters from grateful parents saying, "You helped save my child."
Here's my scientist friend, Dr. Carola Efforts from Munich, Germany.
My son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when he was very little. This is a shock diagnosis for the whole family, and one of the most challenging points is the low blood sugar at night. So in the beginning, we simply set a clock to be sure he's fine and he will wake up in the next morning. After a while, we received the CGM from the health insurance, and this was truly life-changing.
We hear from another mom, my niece, Lindsay Palomo.
Speaking as a mom of a type 1 diabetic, I can tell you what a relief it's been to have my daughter wear a CGM. Having that device has allowed us to let go a lot. So having the CGM on her has given us a complete peace of mind. I'm able to see what her blood sugar is on my phone all day long, or my watch all day long. It's basically allowed us to release our child to do normal childhood things, go to friends' houses, go to birthday parties, go to sporting events, and all of that would not be doable if we didn't have our CGM. So as a mom, I'm so grateful for this device and what it's doing for my child.
And now I'll read what my great niece, Mia, who's 11 years old, wrote herself about her experience. Before I wore a CGM, I would have to prick my finger 8 to 12 times a day to check my blood sugar. When I woke up in the morning, before all snacks and meals, before bedtime, physical activity, and any time I felt low or high symptoms. Plus, my parents would have to prick my finger often in the middle of the night. It was the worst. Having a CGM helps me read my blood sugar at any given time. It allows me to play soccer without stopping to check my blood sugar. Now I can just play. And if I feel low, I can glance at my Apple Watch, check, and if I need, I can run to the sidelines and eat candy before running right back out on the field. Wearing a CGM also helps me keep my school days as normal as possible. Thank you, Mia, and thank you, Lindsay.
You know, Pam, these continuous glucose monitors, we see them really everywhere now. And once inventions like these become commonplace, it's really easy to forget the unseen struggles and years of persistent work behind them, often against steep odds. Our goal in this podcast is to shine a light on those hidden journeys, like the one of Adam Heller, who rose above a childhood shaped by hatred and hardship to create inventions that have profoundly benefited society. Here's Ephraim telling us about Adam.
So many of that generation who went through the Holocaust came out cynical and embittered, and they lost so much. My father came out very differently. He came through the Holocaust with a commitment to making the world a better place. And that sounds trite, but it really was what he took away from that experience. And I once asked him why he went into science and what he'd find so passionate about it. And one of the answers he gave me was that in the scientific community, he builds an international community. He had so many friends from every nation, international collaborators.
I grew up to see that most people in the world hate each other because of minor differences. In this country, we do accept difference, and because we do accept difference, we can innovate, and we can hope to create a better world.